Now, you probably know about Jehovah's Witnesses. We don't go anywhere without food. That's who we are.
Mark Sanderson is back, and this Saturday convention finale, our voluptuous friend will tell us how we can all endure persecution. You know this is gonna be a doozy. Remember, we're still doing the cringe challenge, guys, so if you cringe, you lose, and when you cringe, please let me know the exact moment you lost it. Are you ready? Let's watch.
Please pay close attention to Brother Mark Sanderson, a member of the governing body, as he delivers the talk, "When persecuted, we patiently endure."
How did you feel in 2017 when you heard that the work in Russia had gone under ban? Can you imagine? Our beautiful branch office was taken by the authorities. Our brothers and sisters all had their kingdom halls seized across the country.
Insane how the first thing that comes to Mark's mind is property investments. Forget the 170,000 JWs who had just lost the right to worship. Russia took all of our beautiful buildings. You greedy fuck.
I was standing in the courtroom when the judge read that decision. And I have to tell you, it was a sobering moment. But now here's a question.
The moment was so sobering that Mark just skipped right ahead. Oh no, a judge just stripped 170,000 people from the right to worship freely. Anyways, here's a question.
Even though it was sobering, was it completely surprising?
Not at all. Ever since the fall of the Soviet Union, the Russian Federation has been slowly developing into an authoritarian state. Other religious minorities had already been banned. It was just a matter of time before Russia came after Jehovah's Witnesses. Anyone could have seen this coming a mile away.
Well, not so. Because the scriptures make it so plain to us that all true Christians must endure persecution. Now, I want to go through with you 3 scriptures. Let's go through them quickly. Here's the first one. John chapter 15 and verse 20. That's where Jesus said, "If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you." Pretty straightforward, right?
So, when does this apply to the governing body exactly?
What about 2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 12? That's where the Apostle Paul said, all, did you get that word? All those desiring to live with godly devotion in association with Christ Jesus will also be persecuted.
First thing, Paul didn't write 2 Timothy. Second, that statement is a big nothing burger. Millions of Christians have lived their entire lives without persecution. Hell, some have even been the persecutors themselves. Does it mean that a Christian that never went through persecution was not a real Christian?
And how about Revelation chapter 2 and verse 10? It says, "Do not be afraid of the things that you're about to suffer. Look, the devil will keep on throwing some of you into prison."
This text was written for first century Christians who had experienced the harsh witch hunts of emperors like Nero, being thrown to the wild beasts, torn to shreds and all that. The author of Revelation was probably not thinking of 21st century Christians living in a Christian majority country with laws protecting freedom of religion. You silly man.
So the scriptures make it very, very clear that all of those who want to be servants of Jehovah are going to experience persecution. And that's not just in the first century or today.
Now our friend Mark is going to tell us how persecuted JWs really are.
When persecuted, we patiently endure. Well, that's the whole answer. See, that's what these faithful ones learn to do. They learn to patiently endure the persecution that was brought upon them. Well, as of this year, 2023, our work is either banned or restricted in 33 different lands. This affects the worship of hundreds of thousands of our brothers and sisters who are just like you and me, just ordinary people who want to serve God.
33 countries where Jehovah's Witnesses are banned or restricted. I mean, that really is nothing special. Most of these are Arab countries where all sorts of Christian proselytism is banned. So although Christians are allowed to worship together without a problem in most of these countries, they're not allowed to convert Muslims. And since Jehovah's Witnesses are known for their proselytizing, of course, these theocracies are gonna limit the activities they can do. Mark makes it seem like these 33 governments have it out against JW specifically, but that's simply not true. And also, if Jehovah was really behind the preaching work, couldn't he find a way to overcome these obstacles? Well, I guess Jehovah likes to stay away from Allah's turf.
And as of today's date, May 13, 2023, over 189 of our faithful brothers and sisters are imprisoned because of their faith.
I don't want to minimize the suffering these incarcerated JWs are going through, but 189 members out of 8.5 million in prison, those numbers are really low. For every 45,000 members, one is in prison. And this is supposed to be the most persecuted group in the world?
If you want to keep up to date with that, go to jw.org and go to the page Jehovah's Witnesses Imprisoned for Their Faith. Those figures are updated all the time.
Alright, let's pull that up. 12 in Crimea, which was annexed by Russia from Ukraine. 27 in Eritrea, the North Korea of Africa. 112 in Russia, with 170,000 JWs living there. We would expect there to be way more people in jail. 9 in Singapore for refusing military service, and 26 in other lands, which is comically low because we're talking about huge countries like China, Afghanistan, and Saudi Arabia. Now, I'm glad these numbers are relatively low. I don't want believers to rot away in prison because of what they believe, but Watchtower tries to paint their religion as one of the most persecuted on earth, and the numbers simply don't reflect that.
Well, whether or not we're in prison, whether or not we live in Russia or we live here in New York, what's the situation for God's people? Well, as you watch the following video, just take notice of some of the different forms of persecution that God's people are experiencing.
Wait, why are we jumping back to the 1970s? That's like 50 years ago. You said we're gonna talk about current examples of persecution, Mark.
It's hard to explain a rage, of being angry that I was a witness. Because I didn't want to make him angry and make a fight. I wanted to have a good marriage, A few times I'd get up in the middle of the night and finish my Watchtower or finish studying for the book study in the bathroom. It was a safe place. I didn't have the nice family and you're bringing your kids to the hall and doing things with people. It felt impossible to be a good witness. If anybody called and asked for Sister Crosby, that was flipping the angry switch to my husband. On a bad day, I did feel sometimes like dying. Or it'd be easier to die.
Are we still talking about religious persecution? Because this seems like straight out domestic abuse.
Before I was baptized, based on my father's example and the Bible truths that I had learned, I believed that maintaining Christian neutrality was the right thing to do. That's why I refused military training. I received a 2-year sentence and was then transferred to prison. I thought I would meet other brothers, but in my location, there was not a single brother there. Living with inmates in a cramped cell, I often experienced emotional issues.
How many young men have lost years of their life in a prison cell, all because of some rules made up by a bunch of men in New York? The Bible never prohibits military service.
Слава, а ты в курсе, что яговисты ведут антисоветскую пропаганду? Слава, ну-ка встань.
During my school years, I experienced much pressure from the teachers.
Russian kid gets harassed at school because his mom chose to follow an American cult.
The search lasted 12 hours.
After that, Alevtina was taken to a temporary detention facility, and I was interrogated until 2 in the morning. I said that I had a serious illness, and therefore I needed to eat. But in spite of that, they didn't allow it.
For 4 months, we did not see each other at all.
It's crazy the amount of time and money Watchtower invests in recreating these persecution scenes, with just the right light, camera angles, choppy editing, and horror music. Persecution porn at its finest.
There are many different forms of persecution. Continue putting up. Well, in this case, putting up with what? Well, you know. You know that brother who refuses to call on you in the Watchtower study? That sister who never says hello at the Kingdom Hall? That family that never invite you over? What are we going to do with all of those people? We just have to put up with them.
Yeah, you're forced to love people which irritate you and who you may not even like. Best life ever.
And it means, you know, brothers, we have to learn that there are some things in life we just can't change.
Sure, but you know what you can change most of the time? The types of people you put up with.
What's the point of similarity between the imperfections of our brothers and persecution? We can't change it. And so what are we going to do? We have to learn to accept it.
Overlooking the quirks of your fellow cult members is not the same as being thrown into a prison cell. What the hell are you talking about?
Well, now, when we pull those 3 different verses together, and we maintain our fine conduct even toward those ones who persecute us and may treat us so badly.
Cry me a river, Mark.
As you watch the next video, take notice of how our brothers and sisters demonstrated patient endurance.
Every morning, I prayed to endure this test, and it helped me feel calm.
After one court session, as I was waiting to return to my cell, I met a young female prisoner. And she and I were talking about the name of God. And she said to me, Wait. I'm going to write the name on the back of this piece of paper so that I don't forget it.
We have no way of validating these stories, by the way. They could be a pure fabrication as far as we know.
О, это Багратян и тебя уже затащила в секту.
And this girl came out after the search and said, when the inspector searched me, she looked at the piece of paper and saw God's name. And I said to her, don't worry. Now neither the inspector nor you will forget the name of God.
What? You could have gotten that woman into a lot of trouble. Also, it's suspicious that these people would have never heard of God's name. They live in a Christian Orthodox state. And wouldn't they know God's name after hearing about Jehovah's Witnesses? I call BS.
I prayed a lot to just do the right thing. And then I realized why it's in the Lord's Prayer. to pray to be forgiving, because you don't always want to forgive the person, but we need to, we have to. And it works when you pray for help about that. Meetings and studying were my lifeline to Jehovah, besides praying. Just made me always feel like a witness. But assemblies were hard because it was just hard telling them. Just going made him angry. A lot of times I never knew what I'd come home to after an assembly or a convention. And I came home as usual. He wasn't there when I came home. There was 30 seconds. He just went in to go, and I pulled up and got out of the car. He had been waiting there all day for me because he wanted to come out and say something to the people that dropped me off. Probably not very nice. I think I always felt Jehovah's hand when I came home.
Always put up with your abusive husband, even if you feel your life is threatened. Forgive him no matter what he does to you. Watchtower once again encouraging women to stay with their abusive husbands, because you never know if you're gonna be able to drag him into your doomsday cult.
But I was determined to spend my time well. So I applied myself to personal study in order to progress spiritually. I prayed earnestly to Jehovah God. Jehovah God, I would be so grateful if you assign just one brother to my cell. Soon, 2 brothers were assigned to my cell. The 3 of us tried our best to fully enjoy the meetings.
So did Jehovah answer this dude's prayer by tossing 2 more men into prison?
At times, issues would arise among the brothers too.
Practically no one had any literature at home, so the meetings were the only source of spiritual food. We had 337 songs in our songbook back then, and I knew almost all of them by heart. So, when I got anxious or uneasy, instead of sinking deep into my thoughts, I simply hummed kingdom songs. I prayed earnestly and at length to Jehovah to remain calm toward the teacher.
Kids shouldn't even be preoccupied about this. This cult sucks.
Even though he scolded me or lowered my grades, I did not consider him an enemy.
We want to keep active in our worship of Jehovah. Did you notice in the video we just watched, Sister Bagration, what did she do? She kept on preaching when she was in the prison, sharing God's name with that prisoner.
Not even being imprisoned exempts you from turning in your monthly ministry report. The hamster wheel must keep turning.
Remember, brothers, whatever type of persecution you may have to face, Satan the devil is going to try to use it to make you terrified. He's going to try to get you to stop serving Jehovah. And if he can make you afraid, you may decide to ban your own worship of Jehovah. Don't give in to it.
I don't know, man. I've never seen Satan use intimidation on anyone. Not even in the Bible. The only one using fear tactics is you.
Don't give in to it. Refuse to compromise. Instead, recognize that we have nothing to fear. Jehovah God is on our side. And how many times have we said that Jehovah plus 1 is always the majority? Isn't that true?
Yeah, it's very easy for you to say. You don't have to fear for your freedom while you're hiding away in your lakeside retreat in upstate New York.
You know, when we were in the courtroom in Moscow, we had been sitting there. The court hearing had gone on for hours and hours. We'd just been sitting there. There'd been no break. Suddenly there was a break. Now, you probably know about Jehovah's Witnesses. We don't go anywhere without food. You know, that's who we are.
Yes, Mark, I can see that. You finally tell the truth for once.
So, you know what happened? Just as soon as a break came, here comes brothers with boxes of sandwiches. Where do you get sandwiches in the Supreme? I have no idea, but anyway. Here comes the sandwiches. Now, the brother starts handing them out to all the brothers and sisters in the courtroom. And of course, right in front of me, there's someone who's obviously a KGB agent. And so I went like this, you know? And so the brother said to the man, would you like a sandwich, sir? No. Oh, please, have a sandwich. No. So, fine, okay. So, you know what happens when you start eating? Everybody's eating, and all those aromas are traveling through the air. I noticed this man, he's going like this, you know. And so the brother walked up to him again. Sir, please, have a sandwich. Man, okay. Now, what's the point? You see, it's not always in huge things, even in small things. We show that we are not conquered by hatred when we do kind and loving things even to those who persecute us.
Well, that was a nice gesture, I guess, but JWs were still banned in the country, so what was the point of that? I mean, you didn't conquer the evil with the good, you just gave a man a sandwich. Also, Mark, the KGB was dissolved back in 1991 with the fall of the Soviet Union. That officer was probably from the FSB, which is like the successor of the KGB, but not really the same thing, they're different entities. Maybe you should lay off the donuts, Sandy, and pick up a history book.
It seems to me like you're the expert, Mark.
Those people who are persecuting us, they can change. They can even become our own Christian brothers and sisters. Now, you can read these stories in the Watchtower, there's many of them through the years.
It's crazy how even in this small act of kindness, Mark had the ulterior motive to convert the guard. It's never kindness for the sake of kindness.
That could happen to you. You could have that experience by not becoming resentful and bitter and retaliating to someone who may be persecuting you.
Imagine if the governing body took their own advice in regard to apostates. Instead of demonizing us and calling us mentally deceased, they instead show us love and respect.
Got him!
Well, let's watch this final video and see how our brothers and sisters benefited from their patient endurance.
Some people might think, well, we'd have a better marriage if I stopped being a witness. Because people stop studying because their husbands are opposed. Well, how do you feel about Jehovah?
He's not my favorite character.
What do you think? How does he feel?
Who cares?
If you depend on Jehovah for the help, he'll give it to you and you'll feel it. It builds your faith. And you know that you just got through something. You can't believe you just did that. It actually happened and you know that he helped you. I continued to be a witness. I could be a witness. It really happened.
Wait, so did she remain married to her abusive husband? Or did Jehovah just give him a heart attack?
The endurance I learned back then has also helped me maintain a happy and peaceful family life with my wife and 2 sons, even when problems occur in the family.
Yeah, I think all of that could be achieved without having to waste years in prison.
In prison, I learned that I had to wait on Jehovah and treat other prisoners kindly. And so I was always ready to witness to them.
Jehovah helped me understand that this was not a time for self-pity, but a time to think about others. When you're busy with the kingdom work, time flies by very quickly.
This obsession with staying busy just freaking kills me.
In the mid-1990s, my wife and I came to visit our parents. So one day, on my way to the store through the park, I saw the same history teacher at some distance. He lowered his head and was about to cry and said, "Ivan, I have caused you so much trouble, and yet you came to me and addressed me so kindly."
What this old history teacher didn't know is that he would soon be destroyed at Armageddon.
From this incident, I learned that it is important to always understand whom the real source of persecution is. Not people, but Satan, who uses them as a tool.
Yeah, no, it's definitely people who cause all this suffering.
So, brothers and sisters, we can't forget these ones that are in prison. We want to pray for them and beg Jehovah to give them the strength they need so that they can be faithful. And at the same time, as the Apostle Paul counseled us in 1 Timothy chapter 2, we want to continue to pray concerning kings and those who are in high station. And why? Well, Paul said so that we can go on leading a calm and quiet life with complete godly devotion. So that should be a part of our prayers.
Alright guys, let's pray. Daddy Jehovah, please show us your strength and stop Vladimir Putin from slaughtering all those innocent civilians in Ukraine. We know you're totally real and will answer our prayers because Mark Sanderson said so. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Did anything happen?
Well, what have we learned in this discussion this afternoon? Yes, we are going to be persecuted. We're not shocked by it. We're not surprised by it. But just as sure as the fact that we will be persecuted, we are not going to compromise. We are not going to retaliate. We are not going to be bitter or resentful, but instead, through our patient endurance and with the help of our wonderful, our amazing God, Jehovah, we will come off completely victorious and we will gain the prize of everlasting life.
The Christian persecution complex, it's very real. But in the case of Jehovah's Witnesses, it's completely blown out of proportions. Yes, it sucks that 189 JWs are imprisoned. Yes, I hate that Putin is a total piece of shit. But at the end of the day, this is Mark Sanderson using the suffering of Russian JWs to scare his audience. He said it himself, all JWs can expect to be persecuted at some point in the future. Watchtower has been exploiting its Russian members for years now, for dozens of propaganda pieces with high production value and dramatic music. The message is clear. Give your very best to Watchtower, Jehovah, right now, so you're able to survive the persecution that is just around the corner. But the thing is, this is not the reality for most Jehovah's Witnesses. Most JWs will never face real religious persecution. Sure, they might be ridiculed for their unorthodox beliefs, but that's nothing like being thrown in a jail cell. The thousands of Christians who are actually being persecuted in places like North Korea and China are not even Jehovah's Witnesses. Take that as you will. But Mark Sanderson, being the cult leader that he is, will never pass up an opportunity to stoke up his followers into a state of fear. Because when people are afraid, they will never dare to get off the Watchtower hamster wheel. So let me know what you thought of this video in the comment below, guys. This concludes the Saturday convention program. We actually made it to the end. We only have one more day left. So please let